Hi, this is Grace Power. I'm with My Gold Sugar, and today this is going to be the 5th video on a series of 10 videos on how to get started with sugaring. On this video I wanted to talk about gloves, because if you've watched some of my YouTube channel videos, there's times where I'm using gloves, there's times I'm not using gloves, and a lot of people ask, why are you using gloves? When do I use gloves? What gloves do I use? I tried using gloves and it didn't work. So we get a lot of comments and questions about the gloves. So to start off, I will say that if you've watched the previous videos, I talked a lot about the temperature and how the hands can be hot, and the heat of your hands will actually influence the sugar, especially when you're doing the paste method and you have it in your hand. Your body temperature, your hand temperature is going to change the consistency of the sugar. And everybody's hands are different. Some people will have cold hands, some people have warm hands, some people have sweaty hands. And then some people, a lot of people like myself, your hands kind of vary depending on maybe the temperature of the room or just that day, maybe your hormones or something. So the hand temperature is going to affect the sugar, so that's just something to keep in mind. If you have cold hands, gloves aren't going to be as important, but if you have hot or sweaty hands, then the gloves really do help stop some of the transfer of the heat into the sugar. And especially if you have sweaty hands, the sweat from your hands is going to change the sugar completely, because that's adding fluid and water to the sugar. It's going to make it softer, it's going to make it more melty. So putting a glove on will keep your sugar in a better consistency, easier to work with, less likely to get melty and messy. So gloves would be important for someone like yourself. So the other thing to keep in mind is that when you're doing hot spots of the body, so if you're doing an underarm, the underarms are going to be hotter. If you just take and feel, up here on your body and then feel your underarm, the underarm's going to be hot. If you're doing bikini line, that area is going to be hot. The anal area for sure is going to be extra hot. And then there's other spots that I find that are a little warmer in temperature, like the face tends to be warmer. The men's chest or women's chest, the chest tends to be warmer. So those are kind of what I call the hot spots. Even behind the knees is usually a little bit warmer spot on the legs. So anyways, when you're doing hot spots, the body area might be warm enough to keep the sugar at the right temperature. So like, let's say you're doing an underarm. The underarm heat is going to be plenty of heat to melt your sugar, so you'll probably want to put a glove on, because that'll stop your hand heat from adding to the heat of the underarm. Another thing that is pretty important, especially if you're doing this in a professional setting, is the fact that sometimes when you pull the hair out by the root, there can actually be fluid coming out of the follicle. Usually it's not much, it's not a big deal, but for sanitary sake, for safety sake, you don't want to have your hand without a glove on, because it's mostly to protect yourself, just against that fluid to fluid contact. If you have a hangnail, or if you have like open something on your hand, I mean, you just don't want to take any chances with the blood. So that is another very important reason to wear gloves when doing, especially coarse hair spot like the chest, the underarms, the bikini line, areas that tend to bleed when you're pulling the hair out. So the other thing that's very important with sugaring and gloves is that you want to have a super tight glove, almost to the point of discomfort, really. I have fairly large hands. I'm 6'1", so it just comes with the body type. And so I would normally wear a female large glove. But in the case of sugaring, I actually use the small, and I've even used the extra small and been happy with it. So some small gloves you're not going to be able to get on maybe on a large hand, but most gloves will stretch enough. You can get the soft or the small glove onto a large hand. And if you're having trouble just putting a little bit of powder on your skin, like a cornstarch or baby powder, can just kind of give your hands a little bit of powder to slip into those gloves a little easier. But the reason a tight glove is important, and you'll find out the hard way if you start with a non-tight glove, is that when you're using the sugar, the sugar will kind of pull the gloves off while you're working with it. If it's not a tight enough glove, you're going to have like the fingers of the glove are going to be out to here, and you're you just lose control of the sugar when the fingers of the glove are kind of all mixed up into that sugar. So when you have a tight glove, the glove will not come into that sugar, and then you have more control with the glove on your hand and working with the sugar. So if you wonder about what kind of gloves, we just started selling gloves on our website because we've had so many people ask about what type of gloves. So the gloves that we have, they're black and they work really well. It's a nitrile, the nitrile, what would you call it? Like, they're not latex, they're nitrile. They're made from nitrile. And so if you have a latex allergy, they're not going to affect you or have any problems. And they work, they just been the best gloves because they're very thick. They're like thick enough that they don't just break off, especially when you're trying to put them on a tight hand. And the only size that we have is small because that tends to be the best size for doing sugaring. But if you have small hands, you'll probably want to get an extra small glove, and the kind that I use, they don't make an extra small in that brand. So you'll have to experiment. I actually, why don't you message me if you have small hands, because I can actually give you a recommendation for another brand that you could try. And if you have any other questions that I didn't cover in this video, make sure to message us. You can go to mygoldsugar.com and fill out the comment form and send that in, or give us a call. Our number's on our website, or email at mypinkwink1@gmail.com. So stay tuned for the next video, the 6th video, where I'm going to be talking about molding and how to mold and where to mold and how many times to mold and all that kind of good stuff. So we will see you in the next video.